In this episode, we're going to explore the tricky topic of ethics and boundaries within mental health and addiction support work. It's going to get meaty, or should I say juicy? Either way, it's going to be a ride, so buckle up. And bravely taking on this topic, we have two more fabulous guests, Caro Swanson and Josh Monson. Not only are they fabulous, they rhyme.
I missed that.
Caro is a colleague of mine from Te Pou and is a legend in the lived experience space for her advocacy, work, and her beautiful way of being in the world. Her role is Principal Advisor, Mental Health, Lived Experience Lead, and she's been busy travelling the country for the last year or so with Malcolm McKenna on various lived experience workforce roadshows, so we are super lucky to get her into the studio with us here today.
Oh, thank you. I am that amazing.
Josh is a peer support worker from Ōtautahi Christchurch who works for Stepping Stones Trust, a faith-based residential and a community mental health service provider servicing Canterbury and Otago. Josh has been working as a peer support worker for 4.5 years now and is a valued member of the Te Pou Support Work Advisory Group and is studying towards a Masters of Applied Social Work. Welcome both of you to The Difference.
Great. I don't remember telling you any of that, so that's good to know.
I may have stalked you on that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Speaking of boundaries.
What a great segue. Okay, so I've done a little bit of your introductions for you, but I will also let you introduce yourself a little bit if you'd like to. Caro, should we start with you?
Sure. So thank you for that lovely intro. As said, I'm Caro Swanson and I have been in the lived experience workforce for 28 plus years now and have done nearly every role within that, including peer support. And watched us grow as a workforce and as a community. And this subject is a really big one, ethics and boundaries. It always is. And we're still figuring out what that means for us. So I'm excited about today. Easily excited, but, excited is good.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, that's probably as much as you ever want to know about me.
Former actress.
Oh, yeah.
Mama.
Yes, that's true. Mama, all those things. And also, don't forget, honorary fellow of the College of Psychiatrists.
Yes. I'm pleased to see you've added that to your email signature as well.
I did.
You need to own that. That's awesome.
I had it for so long. But no, that's actually been an interesting thing as well. So, yeah, that's me. I've been around for a while, made it to 65, so I'm a pensioner.
Woo, gold card.
I know, I have one.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you with us, Caro. And Josh, could you introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Yeah, I'm Josh. I've barely been alive 28 plus years.
Wow, that took a turn.
As I said, I work for Stepping Stone Trust in Christchurch as a community support worker, work one-on-one, run groups, and I also coordinate a psychoeducation program. And that's kind of my break from my real job at home with 4 kids.
Kids under 5.
Yes.
So that's the real work. But this is what I do on my time off.
Oh, thanks so much. Can you please tell us a little bit about the organisation that you work for?
I work for Stepping Stone Trust in Christchurch, which is a faith-based NGO, the biggest in the city, I'm pretty sure. We have residential and community services. I work on the adult community team and I run some peer support groups and do one-on-one stuff. And I also coordinate the Mindwise program, which is a MBT-based psychoeducation program.
And what does MBT stand for?
Mentalization-based treatment.
Ooh, Google it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Caro, you work for Te Pou, same as me, colleagues. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your role, though, within Te Pou?
Sure. So my role is Principal Advisor for Mental Health, and that's not just lived experience, but all of mental health, because I think I've been working there so long and within mental health for so long. I applied and got that role.
Yep.
So, and then I am also lived experience lead. I've been with Te Pou for nearly 20 years now. I was with them when they began. So I've watched a lot of changes for us, a lot of the growing pains we went through, and alongside that has been the way of bringing in like support workers and lived experience workers and developing things that actually work for them. I really like that. Yeah. I like that our resources in general are useful.
Okay, so today, like I said before, we are tackling a really tricky topic, ethics and boundaries, within the context of mental health and addiction support work and, of course, peer support work. And so, you both kind of looked, well, no, Caro, you looked excited when I asked you to be on this, but Josh, you looked a little bit terrified. And I had to really reassure you that I'm not expecting you to be a doctor of philosophy. None of us are, maybe Caro is, but ethics and boundaries are something that all of us have to deal with all the time, and our support kaimahi are dealing with ethical and boundary issues every single day in their work. So they don't have a PhD in philosophy either. So we're trying to figure out what it means for kaimahi and how they can navigate it and what it can kind of show up like. It's not always the massive things. Sometimes it's the little things which can snowball. So just a conversation, a kōrero about, the realities of how this works in people's everyday jobs. So I wanted to kind of start off with a little bit of a conversation about the differences between standard support work and peer support work, because the boundaries are different between the two different roles. And that's going to, our conversation is going to go there. I know it will. So for the people at home who are listening to this, they might not be aware of the differences between the two. So I, went to the internet, as everybody does. Even though I work on support work all the time, it's always handy to get a nice little handy definition. Support workers deliver a range of services that contribute to a client's ability, and we can talk about the word client later, to take part in their community, have quality of life, recover from and cope with challenging situations, and live with dignity. So, Caro, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, what's the difference for peer support? Because they also do those things.
That's true. So the difference is that in a peer support role or any of the consumer peer support and lived experience roles, you are expected to use your personal lived experience in the work that you do. And that is often seen as a very different boundary from other more clinical roles or even support work roles. And we do know that people in those other roles, including support roles, do have their own lived experience. But in these roles that we're talking about here, it is the first priority that the person has when they apply for those roles, that they have their own lived experience, that they are willing to share and use that in the work that they do, and that they have a level of skill in being able to use those things and know how to use them, which is actually quite a complex and sophisticated way of working. Which I think support work is sophisticated anyway. People underrate it, I feel. That's my opinion. And even more so for lived experience workforce. So that is the difference. It's in our title. Everybody knows we have our own personal experiences, which creates its own pluses and minuses. You're outed as someone who experiences mental health or addiction issues, but it is It has been, naming our workforce and growing it has been a really important way of fighting discrimination as well. So we work alongside support workers and other roles, and like we say, there's lived experience in those roles. It's just not part of their role.
Yeah. And I think you made a really important point there. It's about knowing how to use that in a really mindful way, because you don't want to just be trauma dumping on people who are coming to you for help, right? So, there's training.
Or rescuing.
To do this role. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm not a peer support worker. I do have lived experience, but I also did just a wee course. Here's a wee plug for Changing Minds, the Rākaroro Tall Trees wee mini course that they do around how to share your lived experience safely. And I think that was a huge learning for me, and also really kind of highlighted for me how dangerous it can be if you haven't had that training, because I went into it just like ready to rip off the scab and then I was destroyed. And you can't do that on a daily basis. You need to know how to keep yourself in a good space and not inflict your trauma onto other people, So it's a highly skilled role, as you're saying.
And there's another part to that as well, that we work within services and NGOs and health spaces, and we have to prepare the rest of the workforce to work with us as well, because for some reason we're scary. Look at me. I'm a sweet old lady. How can they be scared of me?
I couldn't imagine.
I know. But you know what I mean? So in doing that too, it creates a different culture. So I think that's powerful as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for explaining the differences there. I also handily downloaded a plain language definition of ethics, because it's kind of one of those things that but then if you have to put words around it, you're like, I don't know. So ethics is a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives. So what do we think that means in the context of support work? Josh, I'm going to throw the mic to you.
I guess the thing with support work is you don't have, you have a level 4 health and wellbeing certificate, you're not governed by a registration board or anything that might be a bit clearer. So I guess ultimately it's you're left to what your organisation, the framework you're working within, what they kind of define, but probably, the more important thing, and it's extra important when you bring in lived experience as well, is what your worldview is and how you map that, because at the end of the day, you're working with your worldview, the worldview of the person you're working with, and the worldview of your organisation, and somehow within that you have to make something work,
100%.
So that takes a lot of reflection and understanding what ethical or moral framework is shaping the way you think, and being mindful that you're not imposing that on other people.
Fantastic. Very reflective answer. I love it. And also you bring up a really good point, is that there is no governing body for support work. So we don't have what, for example, people who are registered with DAPANs would have. They have a code of ethics for addiction practitioners. And so that is a helpful thing to be able to guide people. And that includes registered support workers, DAPAN's registered support workers. But for the rest of the support workforce and peer support, there are no regulations. There are guidelines, especially for the lived experience workforce, which has been, a labour of love, I know, for you, Caro. Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about some of the things that your team has developed to guide lived experience or peer support workers?
So I guess, we've been building for a while now. We're not an emerging workforce. We've definitely emerged. And, throughout a lot of the development of the resources that support us, which I had a lot to do with, there was this whole idea of we are a values-based workforce. We work in values-based ways, and that's a really important part of what we do. And in building this workforce, we did the competencies first, the capsule competencies, and that was around drawing a line in the sand about who we are and what we do. And probably just as importantly, there were definitely elements of what we don't do.
Yeah.
And being clear about all of that and doing it by us, for us. So that was our line in the sand. And we, having done that, I think we've often used the values we have within that, and all of it came from our community and our sector. I think we've used the values a bit like an ethics framework. And so, that was the beginning of this. But there's every change of government brings a threat to the lived experience workforce. And so then we developed a workforce development strategy, which outlined for the next 5 years what we thought would, and this came again from the sector, what we thought would be good for our workforce and the things we needed to do to get to our vision of, a vibrant workforce that was valued. And then alongside that, we developed an action plan, because a strategy without an action plan and identified people to do it just doesn't happen. Yeah. People love it and they want to do it. But so within all of that, this was always coming through, and we used probably about 1,000 different ethical lenses of each of us as we went through, and there were lots of fights and there was also lots of spectacular successes. But I think we don't have a code of ethics yet that is national, but I think we're building what that means for us, because it doesn't have to be like every other code of ethics you've ever seen. So we're building through the values work, I think, and through the learning how to do things in a less hierarchical way, that we build up
that mutuality.
And what are the things that are important to us. So what would our ethics look like? What are they about? So there's a bit of work to be done, but it's all going on. We've done the first 5 years of the strategy and we're developing a new one now. So lots of work. The things that do consistently come up, how do we do ethics, but also the boundaries thing. That is still a big subject, and as much that other people don't understand our boundaries more than it matters so much if we don't, we understand our boundaries, other people don't necessarily.
That's where you have scope creep.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. For the rest of the workforce then, you touched on it, Josh, you have your organisational policies and procedures, and we always, say that's your first port of call. But where else can people get some guidance? I know you were talking before, Josh, you work for a faith-based organisation. I imagine that plays into your mahi as well.
From my perspective, it's not so much a tool, and it shouldn't be. You can't pray people's distress away.
Damn.
Well,
I'm really pleased to hear you say that.
It's not like a magic wand, and I think for what I see is it does inform a base of values and that at its core it blends with the workforce in that it's emancipatory, that we want liberation for people from distress, and I think that's what it informs for me. And again, it does take some of that reflection of understanding that, from a lived experience perspective, if that, because that was a big part of my journey, that also, I can't also go, oh, we'll just pray to Jesus and he'll make you happy, It's actually coming back to that reflection and understanding that what works for me won't work for everybody else, but also when I see it working is when it really brings together like the organisation around like a core set of values and a core message. And that isn't also then being oppressed on everyone and used. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And people find the heart in that, eh?
Yeah. And I think it really does connect with people when it's used well. Yeah.
That's awesome. There are, of course, other things that can guide us in this space. So legislation, we've got the Health and Disability Code of Rights, which is super important to always remember. We've got the Privacy Act and other acts like the Mental Health Act, which, sit a little bit less comfortably sometimes with us. And I think that that's a really important point as well, is that just because it's in legislation doesn't mean that we have to agree with it and that we necessarily think that it's right. We are bound by it while it is legislation, but we have to find our own comfort with what we do.
And look for the opportunities within it as well, because there's always something that you can take and use. So I think that's an important part of it as well. But yeah, legislation's like a sledgehammer. It kind of wipes out everything.
I guess what I think about with this as well is you have, we as a workforce, you don't want to go too far in the Wild West loosey-goosey direction of having nothing, But I also think we don't want to necessarily just go and recreate a registration board. I think there is a cool opportunity to, which is what is happening, is developing something a bit more unique by the people,
By the people, for the people.
Yeah. And I think
the people.
Really coming from a perspective of working with people, like it actually just does connect in a way that I see it connect in a unique way, particularly with, as soon as you bring in that lived experience and say, I've been on the other side of this conversation, people's guards go down. And that's really, what you want to keep. But the rest of it as well, I'll bring in some Gen Z slang. It really is. It's a big vibes thing, right?
Yeah.
Is like that's
we understand that, Caro?
Yeah. I think
Slay brother.
You got Riz.
You do just know, and I think what I say this all the time, but you will make mistakes in this job. You just have to learn to make mistakes well and to make them in a way that you can repair the relationship if it's needed, or walk back something you've said, or, while being as professional as possible, obviously, But, you're not so rigid that stuff doesn't work for people, and you only find out if something doesn't work by doing it and it not working. And I think what I try and do is work in a way that, I can go on that mutual learning journey with the person and go, oh, cool, this didn't work for us. Let's, find something else.
And that's how people learn, right? Is by making mistakes and having that experience and learning on the job. So we know that that's an important part of it. And a beautiful part of support work is the fact that it's not so tightly regulated, because a lot of creativity and flexibility comes with that.
Yeah.
And some of the most beautiful, bits of mahi around the country comes from that community-driven space.
The thing that we don't hear talked about so often, but definitely plays into things like ethics and boundaries, is for the lived experience workforce and the support workforce that we're part of, we spend more time with people who are accessing services. We often are the one that know them and their whānau the best, and we have a lot of insight. So I think that gives a whole other layer to our work and a whole other responsibility as well. Because, if when I think of ethics more than boundaries, my first one always is, well, it used to be do no harm, that was my first thing. And sometimes, in tricky situations, you might have to do harm to get to somewhere else. But I've changed that now because it kind of doesn't fit our flatter structures and the way we work. And my first ethic is always do good. Because even when it's bad, there is always something good. You can find your way. So that's where the ethics kind of start for me. And the other thing I've learned as I've gotten older, of course, is that things I thought were set in stone and solid, you see code of ethics and it's like, it's a big, bold black letters and it's like the 10 Commandments. Someone's walking out of the ocean with it on a big stone slab. Maybe I've gone a bit far there, but but you have that sense of that. But in fact, it's not like that at all. Everything is grey, and you have to weigh up where you're at the moment. What is the best thing for the person in front of me? What is it that I can do? How do I make them feel safe and comfortable? What do we have here? And there's a whole pile of layers on it that will change what you use at any given time, because what you do, it's like what you were saying about, it's different for each person. That's part of what our ethics and boundaries and stuff work towards, is how do we take all this stuff that we have and apply it in the best way for people and always do good, like Mary Poppins.
I love that.
Do
good.
I am stealing a later question here, but
yes, that's fine.
This stuff is always fluid. Like it's never set in stone. And if it was, every policy manager wouldn't have a job, right? It's like, you sit around in like group supervision and stuff, and someone, has a situation, and you're like, I have no idea what to do. That's whoever would have thought that would happen in this job, And I think that is any good model knows its limits and knows that, when things don't necessarily fit it, that you need to like broaden the scope and like reflect on it more. And,
humans are messy creatures, right? We don't fit nice and neatly in boxes, even, if people try to stuff us in there. And I think, we've got these guidance systems, but like you say, it's got to be fluid and flexible, because not every guideline will suit every situation or every person.
I was thinking about the boundary stuff this morning and thinking about all the times I really, really stuffed that up when I first started working in, a lived experience role, which was within a DHB. And I think that is a hard one often for our new people, because you've been through hell and you know what hell feels like. Watching someone go through that, and your body remembers, everything remembers. My first year, I'd been really, really good for a long, long time, stable with not having, too much stuff going on. And once I started working in mental health, every gremlin I ever had decided to make an appearance, not all together, but they staggered themselves. But a lot of it was because my heart was with people, and so I did dumb stuff, really dumb stuff. I answered them when they called me at night, things like that. And I had struggles figuring out where all the lines were, and I think that still is a struggle for lots of people. Like, was I their friend? Was I their worker? How could I, leave them hanging at night? Because I know what that's like. I can't bear it. And what if anything goes wrong? So, there's this whole kind of marathon of learning and growing that you need to do. And way back when I started, to be fair, it was harder because we had nothing. We had no guides, nothing. But those are powerful things, and, a big part of who we are. And again, it's also about, as far as boundaries and stuff goes, and I think this is true for support work as well, it's about how you be true to all of that and have flexibility in some of your boundaries, but don't be dumb. In fact, I'll write a book on that. Don't be dumb.
It's got a really catchy title.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's going to have a picture of me on the front. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just, you do make mistakes. And the important thing is now there are people there to help you if you do. There didn't used to be. And that, we need to accept mistakes as a really important part of growing and changing.
Because ethical issues aren't always obvious, are they? They're not always giant, big, really black and white, clearly one side is right, one side is wrong way of doing something. Sometimes they're very grey. In fact, most of the time they're very grey. And I think one really interesting place where we can see that is in the little interactions that support workers have every day with the people that they support. Caro, I love the example that you were talking to me about a can of Coke. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
You were saying about how, it could be just like, one day the person that you support, tāngata whaiora, might bring you a can of Coke when they meet with you, and you think, oh, that's really lovely. And then the next time they also bring you a can of Coke, and then pretty soon it's like every single time you see them, and it's, where do you draw that line? Are they now bringing it because they think they have to? Or and what happens when they say, oh, well, I can't catch the bus because I used my last of my money on that can of Coke for you. Could I have a ride? And then it starts going into your boundaries, So, I mean, it could be just little things like that can snowball, right?
So that was Malcolm's story.
Was it?
Yeah, it's such a good story for that.
Malcolm.
You can see how easily it starts. And every blowout or, anything like that starts with small things. It's not that last thing that blew this, whatever it is, up. And I think that's really important to remember, that it is the small things that you do every day that will make or break whatever's going on here. So, the example that I was thinking about is that there are things that layer on top of codes of ethics and values and, all those sorts of things. And one of them is common sense, because we tend to build
vibes.
Vibes.
Is that what that means? Thanks for explaining.
Vibes. Yeah, vibes. Love the vibes.
Common sense.
So safe.
Yeah.
And common sense can get knocked away because we're doing what we think we should be doing within it, the constructs of our work and stuff. And the example, it's an obvious one, but it still stands out to me. It was when I was early in my career that I never expected to have. And one of the people that used our service quite a lot, and I knew him really well. He'd come in the night before, and he'd been put in seclusion into the unit. And I was really concerned about that. I thought, that's a bit weird. So I went to see him, and he was angry and upset, and he said, they wouldn't let me have a cigarette. So which is still common, can I just say. So anyway, I went and talked to the staff, and the poor guy, he'd been in the police cells for quite a while, like 2 hours or something. Then they'd brought him in late at night, and he'd been going through a really hard time. He was quite unwell. And when he got to the hospital, he asked if he could have a cigarette because, he'd been in all that. Because it was after 10:30 and the doors are locked at 10:30, they wouldn't let him have a cigarette. They said, no, we can't do that. So surprise, surprise, he blew up. Yeah. He absolutely blew up and ended up in seclusion, which was really awful. And when I looked at that later on from my lofty perch high atop, being fabulous and having compassion and caring. But you know what I mean? When I looked at it, I thought that was a really dumb thing
and
too.
Avoidable.
Yeah. why didn't they just let him have a cigarette? And I did ask that, and they said, oh, then everybody would want one. But to be fair, nobody else was up.
Yep.
Just saying. But that's when I saw that kind of clash between rules and frameworks that are put in place to keep people safe and to make sure, things work. And the kind of, alongside that, they'd taken away people's ability to make choices that instinctually are much better. So, for me, that all the ethics and boundary stuff comes around all of that. And I think, if we could teach common sense, that we'd be a lot better off. But in some ways, we're not encouraged to use it. Whereas I think in our workforces, we do more because we do work instinctually quite often.
Well, it's like the difference between what is right and what works.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess that
Yes.
that personally, that's my frustration with me, more of a rigid
Yes.
clinical, which I guess then, to give them credit, there's more risk and all that, that there's a lot more stuff
And that
than what
has a
we have to
place.
deal with. But yeah, the inability to go with the vibes,
It's gonna be a
and
feature of
go,
this, isn't
okay,
it?
well, you're starting from a place of policy and that can't move. Yeah, and it's hard to feel like maybe there's a better way to do this, but there's so much stuff in the way that, sorry. But, yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think for the longest time too, both of our workforce combined, by the power combined, we've been scared to say we're amazing and we're good at things. So we've been scared to evaluate properly and to prove what we do works. And I think that's the other half of it because, the clinical work is still important. It's a really important part of what we do. But this is also important and different. So how do we evaluate that so that we do come up with the frameworks that work best for the people we're serving, first of all, but for us as workers as well. So I think that is, what kind of the changes that need to happen is that, and I've been saying this for ages, we don't have to do things the same as every other workforce. We can do them differently.
And we don't have to do things the same way forever either.
No.
We're
still growing.
Yeah, and I talked about legislation a little bit before and, finding your peace with what you have to do in your role as opposed to what you feel like is the right thing to do. But, an important part of the lived experience workforce is pushing for change, pushing for better. So, things like ethics, I think, are constantly evolving, and that is the right way. Sometimes regressing, which can be hard. But I think you've always got to find whatever you're restricted by in terms of the law or your organisation's policies and procedures, you have to find a way, if you're going to stay in that workforce, of being able to live with it.
Yeah.
And I love your idea, Caro, of, only do good. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Only do good. I had an example that I was going to share. Years ago, I was involved in making accessible information, and we were asked by a certain DHB to make a poster for people who were in seclusion about their rights while they're in seclusion. And we didn't agree with the practice of seclusion. So we were like, how can we even do this? This feels really wrong. And we mulled over it. And we were like, well, okay, people who are going to be in seclusion are going to be there whether we make this poster or not, and they deserve to know their rights. Yep. So we were like, okay, we're gonna work with you and we're going to make this poster, but we're not going to put our logo on it, because we don't want to be looking like we tacitly support the practice. So we thought, okay, that's what we can live with. That sits with our ethics. And then they came back to us and they were like, hey, the pictures, we have a problem with the pictures because the people look really sad. And we're like, sorry, that's our boundary. We refuse to put happy people in seclusion on the pictures. So, you just have to use what we've made and be happy with it, or use something else. So, these things are not always clear, but you have to know what you can sit with and what you can go to sleep at night with. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes you're involved in something that you regret or that you feel very badly about. But that is also how you learn about what is your boundaries. And I wanted to ask you both, what you think are the differences in support work between your personal boundaries and your professional boundaries.
So when I started, I was a spry young 23-year-old optimistic about changing the world. No, and I remember this is my first person who, was going to be homeless. Like, the house they were in had been sold, and they were about to, they had nowhere to go. The police were coming and taking so, and before this, when I was younger, I was living in a flat of 10 people, and we had people staying all the time, like the door was never locked.
Did you invite the person to come live with you,
No,
Josh?
No, okay. That's not where this is going. But, that voice was in me, that's my worldview of like, well, I have the resource, the food, the spare room, to like help these. And it wasn't just that, it was like kind of anyone I worked with, it was like, well, I have the privilege and the resource to help these people. Like they could just come, they could just come and stay at my house, right? But I had to, and this was kind of my big, my big growing moment, of like, oh wow, this is actually what this job is like. And everything ended up being fine for that person in the long run, which in a way taught me that like I don't need to catastrophize things, that like generally things will be okay. Sometimes they're not, and other times they haven't been, and that's been a thing to reckon with. But it did kind of teach me that both me as the worker and as the person, we kind of need to zoom out to like see the bigger picture, and not, although like crisis and emergency, that's all important, but you can't actually treat everything like that. So that was a bit of a shock for me of like going, my worldview is telling me to like give this person what I have, right? And that, even from like a faith-based perspective as well, it's like that's so deeply ingrained in me, and I then have to like leave this person with nowhere to go at the end of the day and then go home to my warm house with my loving family and just kind of sit there and think, wow, where are they now, And they ended up having somewhere to go, but still that was a huge clash for me, and that's been really, that was a big learning experience.
It's so hard, isn't it? It's like what I was talking about before, am I their friend, am I their, there's a whole pile of murkiness that you have to be able to find your way through, and the only way probably is to make some mistakes.
Yeah, but I've never done that, so.
Never made a mistake.
Same. Yeah, all these years, not one.
I didn't realise I had saints on the couch.
Can't you see our halos? Can you see my halo?
So what advice would you both give to people working as support workers around setting boundaries?
When I started and what I watch now, there is some talk about, and we do have things in the competencies around it as well, but I don't know that we always have the conversations which help us to figure out what that is for you, in your work, and, how you need to lay those down. I am useless at boundaries in my personal life as well.
Why did I invite you on this episode?
Because I'm a bad example rather than a role model. This is what happens, folks, when you have poor boundaries.
I'm the one that's never made a mistake. You got both ends of the spectrum.
Yin and yang.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have them, and the other bit of that too is that we really need for people to have good reflective practitioners and ability to, so that, because people need to understand where their lines in the sand are, but also where the services sit, and all these things to put together. You do need support to be able to do that, and you need to talk to people who are more experienced in the beginning, and I think that's really important. So, yeah, I guess that would be mine. Seek out someone who has been around for a bit and talk to them about it and figure out what that means for you.
Great advice.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would say don't wait till you need supervision.
True.
Don't wait until you need someone to talk to, because as I've said numerous times already, you will make mistakes. Like, be prepared for that and structure your relationships. Like your relationship with the person, your team, your colleagues, your team leader, your external supervisor. And also with yourself.
Yes.
That was my big wake up thing. Was I need to be prepared to be bad at this. That's why I failed as a wedding photographer, because I had a meltdown when I didn't do a good job, right? And that, in hindsight, that's what I've learned, is I wasn't prepared to do something badly to get good at it, And I think, now I know that I need supervision booked in to go to, and stuff will come up. I can yap, but like, book ahead, because otherwise,
you talked then about supervision or reflective practice. I kind of think that our peeps need it right from the beginning, so you wouldn't wait necessarily for is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Don't
wait till you feel like you need it.
Yeah, now I understand you.
I just want to thank you both for being brave to tackle this topic.
It's all right, just light and fluffy.
Yeah, light and
chat,
fluffy topic that we're just throwing on you. You're very, very brave. And did I say brave? No, I'm very grateful. And it's been a lovely chat with you both. And just keep going with your beautiful mahi, both of you. You're doing wonderful things and helping our mental health and addiction system to be more healing and less harmful. So I thank you both for that.
Always do good.
Always do good. Thanks for listening to The Difference. We'd love to hear what you think about the podcast and where it is reaching. If you've got a few minutes, please do leave us a comment in the comments section. Tell us what role you're in and which bits of the podcast you've found useful. It'll help us to know if we're pitching things right or picking topics that resonate with the sector. Kia ora.